2 weeks ago, after an already stressful week, my hard drive that I use for YouTube and other things died. With no warning, in the middle of editing, it just gave up. And of course, no one likes something like that to happen to them at any moment. And for me, it was just the cherry on top of an already bad week. And when something heavy happens in your day, you feel wired or jittery and you can't seem to get out of that state, so you just do anything in the hopes of getting out of that. And I had an evening in, I ordered some takeout, I put on a movie, I didn't want anything to do with my PC at that point. And things like that do work, at least in the short term. But over time, they can stack up, making the stress and those jitters feel worse. And that's what I want to talk about today. Different ways to deal with that, coping essentially, and what works for me. Coping is basically how we respond to stress or discomfort. It could be a thought, behavior, or a specific habit. When we cope in ways that are positive, we improve our resilience. But when we rely only on ways that numb, distract, or postpone, we often pay for it later, with mental exhaustion, guilt, shame, and just overall avoidant behavior. How we cope influences not only how we feel now, but how we bounce back later. It affects anxiety, depression, sleep, relationships, you name it. And a quick example of unhealthy coping would be doom scrolling. I think we've all done it at some point. Some of us maybe do it more than others. And that often feels good, fast. But it doesn't help solve what's under the hood. Things that I do that are considered more healthy would be journaling, reframing the situation, or sports. And you can do those just by yourself. You don't need anyone else for that. And maybe also important to add, starting out with things like that does feel like you have to put some effort in. But I want to assure you that it's not going to stay like that forever. Creating habits take time and some effort, but it helps build up that resilience over time. I think a more important question that you should ask yourself, especially in the beginning stages, is, does this feel like it's actually helping you? And why do things like doom scrolling feel more tempting? Why do we go to those unhealthy coping mechanisms? And I think it's because the brain often wants more immediate relief. Avoidance or numbing gives a quick drop in that discomfort, but it will come back. And sometimes even worse, because you haven't actually spent time to process it. And when I'm talking about healthy coping mechanisms, healthy things aren't always a purely positive thing. For example, forcing yourself to always be strong or productive can become just another form of avoidance. Toxic positivity, telling yourself that it's all good all the time without investigating what's actually causing the hurt. Another thing is overdoing coping. For example, always journaling or always planning, perfectionism. These things can hide fear or feel overwhelming and stressing on their own. So lastly, if you feel unsure where to start out or how to figure out what works for you, I've actually written some things down that might help you figure this out. The first question being, what do you do when you feel stressed? What makes you spiral versus what gives you some breathing room? Another thing, it's not really a question, but another thing is, don't try to overhaul everything. Change versus growth. Start small, choose one or two new strategies that you can try and are willing to implement. Next, set intention. When you feel X, stress, shame, overwhelmed, whatever, I will try Y. The if X then Y helps catch it in the moment. Another important point is consistency. Things might not work at first, and that's fine. And learning to cope is a long-term process. Give it time, do it regularly. And lastly, be kind to yourself when you don't do it perfectly. slip-ups aren't failures. If anything, it's information. What made it not work? What pushed you towards the unhealthy coping this time? What was hard about it? And these are things that, for me, work really well. And I hope that this video was useful to you in some way, shape, or form, even if you got nothing out of what I just said, but just needed to hear that everyone deals with stress and has their own struggles. That's fine too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.